Nathaniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on a big rivalry matchup coming up here in Week 13 of this 2022 college football season. And it's going to be over the LSU Tigers and the Texas A&M Aggies. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 13. You got two teams here that have had very different seasons. LSU is back from the dead. This team is ranked in the top 6. They're 9-2 on the season. They've had a great season to this point. And they're taking on Texas A&M, who is probably the biggest disappointment of the season. This team is 4-7 right now. This team is pretty much eliminated from bowl contention. And who would have thought that? This team with the highest ranked recruiting class heading into the season. There's no lying here. Texas A&M had very high expectations heading into 2022, and they have been a letdown. But this is obviously a huge game for both these teams. Texas A&M to finish out the season on a high note, head into the offseason with a decent win. You could say a great win against an LSU team that is ranked once again in the top 6 and potentially remains as a college football playoff contender. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Starting with your team trends, LSU beat UAB 41-10. Solid win for them last week. They're 9-2 on the season, 6-1 in conference. And this team, despite taking 2 losses, I think it's pretty clear this team is the best 2-loss team in the country just based on their losses. I mean, they lost in week 1. I think that was on a Monday night to Florida State. And Florida State turned out to be, for one, a pretty good team this season. But also, that was way back in week 1, and it was just a tough ending there. But, and of course, you look at their loss to Tennessee. They lost to them 40-13. But ever since that Tennessee loss, this team has been on fire. You could say that they are one of, if not the hottest team in the country right now. I mean, and they've won 5 straight. They've played really well down the stretch. I don't know what happened after that Tennessee loss, but this team has really kicked it into a different gear, and they are playing very well right now. But as for Texas A&M, kind of the opposite. I mean, they beat UMass 20-3, but UMass is probably the worst team in the FBS. They are not a good football team. One of the worst teams in the FBS for that matter. And for Texas A&M being a 4-7 team right now, yeah, it's just been a brutal season for the Aggies. They've taken a lot of one-score losses. I will say that. I feel like this team is better than their record shows. And just because, I mean, all those close losses. I mean, they kept it within 4 against Alabama. They lost by 6 to South Carolina. They lost by 3 to Ole Miss. They lost by 3 to Auburn. They lost by, if you look back to week 2, they lost to App State, a team that they should not have even considered losing to. They lost to them by 3. So a lot of one-score close losses for Texas A&M this season, and it's led to be just a disappointing season for the Aggies, that's for sure. And this team has no business, quite honestly, being 4-7 right now. They got so much talent on their team, the top recruiting class in the country heading into the season. I mean, it's unthinkable that this team is 4-7 right now. But here we are, and this team is only 1-6 in conference. Games will be on Saturday, November 26th in College Station, Texas. Your kickoff is 6 p.m. Central Time. Spread's going LSU by 10. So the Tigers are favored by right about a touchdown and a field goal here. Over-under is 46.5. And the FPI is going LSU 73.4%. Series history. LSU leads at 35-22. They won the last matchup, and they've also won 3 out of the past 5. Stat comparison for this one. LSU is a strong team defensively. They're also pretty good on offense. They're 44th in points per game, 19th in points allowed. They're strong in the rushing game as they're 37th in the country there. And then for yards allowed, they're 27th in rush yards allowed, so in the top 30. So this team has got a strong rush defense. But all around, this is a solid LSU team, across the board. I mean, they're averaging 33 points a game and only allowing 20, which is overall pretty impressive. And as for Texas A&M, this team offensively, that's really where this team has struggled this season. I mean, they've had a couple of bad defensive performances, that's for sure, but for the most part, this offense just hasn't been able to get anything done. They're averaging 21 points a game, allowing 21 points a game. That puts them 106th in the country in points per game. They're 36th in points allowed. Pass yards a game, they're 90th. Rush yards a game, 84th. And then for yards allowed, they're 3rd in passing. So a top 3 pass defense in the country here, but they're 126th in rush yards allowed. So they're allowed a lot of rush yards this season, right around 210. And then for pass yards allowed, they've got 152. Recent matchups, LSU beat UAB 41-10, beat Arkansas 13-10. They beat Alabama 32-31. So a couple of close wins there. But even though, I mean, Arkansas, they're playing pretty well right now, so I wouldn't say that's not a bad win per se for a top 6 team. But they beat Alabama. That's obviously the huge win for this team that really brought them up in the rankings. Shot them up in the rankings. They beat Ole Miss as well, 45-20. That was also a huge win. Beat Florida 45-35. And as for Texas A&M, beat UMass 20-3. Lost Auburn by 3. Lost to Florida 24-41. That was an ugly loss there, allowing 41 points to the Gators. They lost Ole Miss 20-31. Lost South Carolina as well, 24-30. South Carolina, I mean, they are the most inconsistent team in the SEC. I mean, they literally just beat Tennessee last week. And if you look at the week before that for South Carolina, just to talk about them for a sec, they lost to Florida the week before they beat Tennessee 30-6. I mean, that's why college football is a sport that we all enjoy so much, is because of how unpredictable it truly is. Your key points for this one: LSU 9-2. They're one of, once again, if not the hottest team in the country right now. You can make an argument that this team, if you put them in the college football playoff, they potentially could win a title. I mean, this team, they beat Alabama. They play really well under pressure for the most part. I mean, their one bad loss of the season was to Tennessee, of course, when they lost like 40-13. But for the most part, this team has been just really excellent otherwise. Jaden Daniels emerging as a top-tier quarterback. I mean, Jaden Daniels, the Arizona State transfer quarterback. Thing is about him is I'm not surprised one bit that he's having the success that he is at LSU right now. If you look at his career at Arizona State, especially when he first came onto the scene, we thought Jaden Daniels was the real deal when he first started at Arizona State. I mean, his stats were outstanding. He never turned over the ball very much. And, I mean, yeah, that was back in 2019. And 2020, 2021, he honestly was a big disappointment for both seasons. And so heading into 2022, some people really didn't think too much of him because of his two disappointing seasons in 2020 and 2021. But turns out this has been his best season by a decent margin. He's really found his stride in this season. He's looking a lot like, and even better than he did in 2019 with Arizona State. So give huge credit to Jaden Daniels there, as he's only thrown 2 picks this season. This is the guy that we thought that we were going to get for the rest of his career at Arizona State. But rushing, I mean, he leads this team in rushing as well, with 740 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. He's overall just an outstanding quarterback, not just in the passing game. So he's a huge threat, and defensively this team has shown huge potential as well. I mean, this is a dangerous team here wherever they play in the postseason. And as for Texas A&M, this team is falling apart down the stretch. Once again, just a disappointing season. You could argue that this team is probably the biggest disappointment of the season, just because, I mean, I think in the preseason they're ranked like in the top 7. The expectations were high for this team. They just haven't been able to do too much, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And, I mean, you got to consider, too, 5 of 7 losses have come within 6 points. So a lot of close losses for Texas A&M. It's just been a brutal season for this team. But that said, let's get the prediction here for LSU and Texas A&M coming up here in Week 13. And I'm going to go with the Tigers to win this one 27-23. I'm going to say it's a close one. I think Texas A&M is going to hang around in this game. I know that they've looked ugly in the past few weeks. Some may say that Texas A&M has pretty much given up at this point. And if they have given up, there's a good chance LSU just routes Texas A&M here. But I do think the Aggies, being at home in this matchup, I think they put up a fight. And I mean, if you look at their season, I know they're 4-7, they're 1-6 in conference, but they've put up a fight in every single game for the most part. I mean, they have had a couple ugly losses, but I mean, really in every game, especially against good teams. I mean, they kept it within 4 to Alabama. They kept it within 3 to Ole Miss. They've put up fights against good opponents. And so I think Texas A&M, it's going to be kind of the same theme. They put up a fight, they make it a close game, but in the end they lose by or within 1 score, and LSU wins this one 27-23. So I'll say 60% towards LSU to win this one. I do think the Tigers are able to pull this one off. Over-under is 46.5. I'll take the over for this one. I do think, I mean, there's a chance that this game ends up being like a 31-14 win for LSU, in the case if you think that Texas A&M is just gonna not be able to do anything, or if they've just given up at this point. But I think, once again, I think Texas A&M does put up a fight here, and they make this a close game in the end, even though I do feel comfortable saying that LSU is going to win it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.